Video we will see what is context API and how to use it. So context API is used to avoid prop drilling. So if you see this tree of components, so let's say O is component, all of these are components, and if I want to pass some data to L component, so this L component I want to pass data, so from O component I need to pass to L component. So for passing that I need to pass that any of the prop to each in between component. So from O component I need to pass to N, from N to again I need to pass to M, and from M to L I need to pass that data. So I cannot directly pass data from O to L. So to receive any prop from O to L, I need to pass it to each of the in between component. So this is known as a prop drilling. So you need to pass prop at each component level to reach to the last component. So this is known as a prop drilling. So to avoid that, we can use context API. So in using context API, you can directly access the prop in any of the component. So if you install, so if you can install a React Tree VS Code extension, and using this we can see a component hierarchy. So once it's installed, you can just click on Start Tree button and select the main file, index file. So main.jsx you can select, and you will be able to see the component tree. So you can see main component.jsx contains app component, and inside app we have three components: header, contact form, and contact list. And inside contact list we have contact component. So the contact component requires two props, contact and dispatch. So from the app component I am passing some data. So if you see here, from app component I am passing dispatch prop to the contact list component, and from contact list that dispatch is passed to the contact component, and contact component is finally using that dispatch prop. So to reach to the contact component I need to pass it from app to contact list and contact list to contact component. So without using that prop, that contact list component is just forwarding it to the child component. So if you have some deeply nested component tree, then it will be, you need to pass that prop to at each component level. So it's not bad to pass a prop, but if you have lot of nesting, then you should avoid that using context API. So let's see how to use the context API. So to use the context API, we can create a new context folder. So here inside we can create a new context. So we are dealing with contact, so we can call it contact context.jsx. Now we can create a context using React dot create context. So this function, this method returns a context, and we can store that in contact context. We can also import React here, and now we can export this as a default export. This create context also accepts default initial value, but most of the time the initial value is not passed. Instead, it's provided in the context provider. Contact now has two components, provider and consumer. So this contact contain the context, in for this contact context we can use provider and consumer. Consumer is used in class component, so we are dealing with functional component, so we'll see how to use that. So now in the app.jsx I can wrap this in contact context dot provider. So it has a provider component, and I will wrap everything in between the provider component. So you can see I have wrapped these components in between this provider component, and provider accepts a value prop. So it needs a value which I need to pass. So you can see I am passing dispatch from this app component to contact list, and from contact list I am passing it to contact. So instead of passing at each level, you can pass it as an object here for value. It's usually passed as an object. I can directly pass dispatch here. I don't need to pass it here now. So here contact list now don't need dispatch. So I will remove it from here, and I also don't need it here. So now that dispatch we can directly access in the contact component. How do we access? We use context hook. So this is from React. You can see it's imported from React. And for this we need to pass the context that we have created. So it's contact context. Can import it at the top, and this contact whatever data we are passing. So here we are passing value which is a dispatch, so it's an object. So we can destructure this inside this contact. So we can destructure dispatch here. So we are getting dispatch, we don't need it through props now. You can see we have this dispatch. So this is how you can access that particular context, any data. So from app component now I don't need to pass that dispatch, and from contact list you can see we just need the actual contact, we are not passing any data. So now this is how you can use context API. So if you check the application you can see it still works. So I can see mic updated, can see, and even if I refresh I'm able to remove also. So everything is working fine, there is no error even in the console. So let's check in the console. You can see there is no error even in the console. So that means it's working. So this is how you can use context API to avoid prop drilling. It's not bad to pass any of the props. So if you see for contact form we can use that context itself, so we don't need to pass this also. But it's just a single level, so from contact form we are directly using these props, we are not passing to any of the other component. So you should not use context API all the time. It's a way to avoid prop drilling, but it also has some disadvantages. So what's the disadvantage? So this advantage is that whenever the value you are passing changes, so whenever the dispatch changes, your all the components in between will re-render again. So whenever any value you are passing, so let's say I am passing context also. So whenever the context changes, your all of the component in between will be re-rendered. So if you have some heavy component, so this is a heavy component which is making some API calls, lot of data is coming. So this component will also be re-rendered again. So whenever the context change, so you should always avoid using context API when not required. So even with this structure React tree it was fine, so we don't need to use context API. But it just to show you how you can use, we are using context API. But this just single two level of passing props is fine, it's not a bad idea. So passing props, most of the React developer assumes that it's bad to pass prop, but it's not a bad idea. You can pass props at least for two level. If you are passing for another level, three level, then you should use context API, and you should use context wrap this only where you are needed. So if you see here in header component we are not using any context, so why to re-render that header component? So what you can do is you can just move it here. So only this, I can move it here. So only contact list needs this dispatch prop, so I don't need it here. So only the contact list component need that dispatch prop. So I am already passing dispatch here. So I don't need to wrap this provider component here. So what will happen if you wrap it here? Whenever the dispatch prop or any other prop you are passing changes, all these component will re-render. So there is no need of passing it here. Only when you are required that particular prop, for that component only you use that. Otherwise all the in between components will also re-render. So now we will create a dark and light theme functionality for our application. So you will clearly understand how to use React Context API. So for that we can install React Icons library. So this is very popular. If you want to get any icons, you can install this library. So first we'll install it. Yarn add react hyphen icons. If you are using npm, you can use npm install react hyphen icons. Now here we can use, let's say, moon. So this, let's use this icon. So to use the icons, what we need to do is, let's start the application. So just beside this title, we'll add that icon. So whenever click on any of this, that particular icon name is copied. So we have copied this one. Now we can use like as a component, and we need to import that. So import from react icons slash, as you can see the icon starts with hi, so you should import from hi, and the name of the icon you can directly destructure. So this is how you can import. So if you check it here, you can see the icon is displayed below, and add some css. You can add a size property, size prop, so it will be larger, it will display large. You can see it's bigger now. We'll display it side by side. So for the header, let's add css. So display flex, so this will make them side by side, and we'll do align items, center, justify content, center. So those will be added side by side. Let's add some gap, one rem, so there will be some gap. You can see now it's displayed. Let's also add a hover effect. So for the header, inside the header, let's give some class name equal to icon. Class name equal to icon, and for this icon we can style this icon cursor pointer. So now you can see there is a pointer whenever you mouse over there. So now whenever I click on this, I need to change it to different icon. So this was moon. Let's select the sun also. So if you go to react.dev, you will see the similar functionality, dark mode. So if you can see, this is a moon, and when I click on this, you can see this is a sun icon. So now we can search for sun, and let's take this BS sun. So to import, again we can go to header, import bs1 from react icons slash, it starts with bs, so we need to use for slash bs, and here bs1, we can just paste it, and we can copy paste the same thing here. So we don't want to display both of these. So right now if you check, both of these are displayed. So let's create a theme context. So here we'll create theme context.jsx. I will just copy this again to save time. Theme context. Now we can use this particular context. So let's say similar to this, we can use this here. Theme context dot provider. So we can do that, but instead of doing this, there is a common pattern. So instead of using provider directly, we can move this into the context itself. So I will create a new constant, new component, theme provider component, and in this we'll return that theme context dot provider. Here in between we will use the children prop. I will explain what it is. We will export this as a named export. So what is this children prop? So whenever you use any component, you can see I am self closing this header, but you can also, let's say there is a button component. So you can close it like this. So beginning and ending tag, and whatever you use in between, this is button, that is the children code. So whatever you write in between will go as the children. So you can even pass this component in between. So here you can pass a component. So everything in between the opening and closing tag will go as a children prop. So we will remove this. And now we have created this theme provider, and here let's declare a state. Let's declare a state. So for this provider you always need a value prop. So here we'll provide a theme. So let's say here by default it will be light theme, and we'll use selected theme, set selected theme. Now this selected theme we can pass it as a prop. So we will pass that as a value, and we'll add a new function to toggle that theme. So from light to dark we need to change this particular value. So we'll add a toggle theme. So we'll add a toggle theme function, and here we'll set this selected theme. So if the current selected theme is equal to dark, then set it to light, otherwise set it to dark. So this toggle theme function, whenever we click on that icon, dark or light theme icon, it will, we are changing this particular state. So this toggle theme also we can pass it inside the value. So now whatever we are using this theme provider, now we can use in our component. So now this entire app component we can wrap in theme provider. This is from context, and we'll close this theme provider. Now all the child components, so app component and all of the child of that app component will be able to access those props. Now inside the header component we can use that. So if you see, we are wrapped this entire app component. So inside this app component we are rendering header. So header also will be able to access those props. So inside header we can use context, theme context. So we need to pass the context from which we need to access, and here we can accept the selected theme. So this is the prop that we are passing from theme context. You can see selected theme. So we have created this theme provider component, and whatever we write in between, so whatever we write in between, all these will app component and all of the children will go as a children prop. And then we are just using theme context dot provider. So this selected theme and toggle theme we have access to, which we can access here. So now by default we'll display this icon. So here we'll add a condition: if selected theme is equal to light, then display this icon, otherwise display this icon. You can see if selected theme is light, then we'll display this, otherwise display this. So now if you check, you can see only one icon is displayed, and when I click on this, nothing happening because we have not added on clicking. So let's add that. So we'll add toggle theme here. Whenever we click on this, the toggle theme, so we are taking out toggle theme. So whenever we click on this toggle theme, we are just changing this particular state value from dark to light and light to dark. So now when I click on this, you can see the icon is changing. So every time I click, the icon is changing. Now we need to change the color, background color and color property whenever we click on this. So for that, we'll create CSS. So let's define some CSS. Let's say theme dot light. So when we have two classes, theme along with light, then we'll say background color white and color will be black. So this is for light theme, and for dark theme it will be opposite. So now we can use these particular things in the app component. Now for the container, instead of just using container, we can use JSX syntax and template literal. Here we'll add this container which was already there. Now we'll add a theme and we'll also add that selected theme. So here we are not taking out. So let's use context, theme context, and here we'll say selected theme. Now here if we'll use selected theme is equal to light, we'll just directly use selected theme, will not add any condition. So whatever selected theme, it will be added. So theme and light or theme and dark. So whenever both of them are for the same element div, then that particular class which we added will be applied here. So let's see. When I click on this, now you can see it's working. So the background color is changing, icon is also changing. Now here it's not changing. So if you see name mic, this particular area is not changing. This is from the contact. So for the contact, it's not changing. So let's go there. What we are doing. So this here we are using list item. So let's add a class name here. And here again we need that use context, theme context, const selected theme, and here we'll use selected theme, dollar of selected theme, and we also need to use theme class. So if you see the CSS, we don't need just light or dark, we need theme also. So now we can use this for each of the item. So now you can see it's changed now. So whenever I click on this, now you can see those icons are also changed. There is one more thing. So if you see use context, so wherever we have used, so we have used it at multiple places, header, contact and abroad. So every time we need to use this, we need to import the use context, we need to import the theme context. So every time we need to do that. So instead of doing that, what we can do is we can create a custom hook. So inside src, we can create custom hooks folder, and here we are dealing with theme. So what we can do is theme, use theme. Yes. So whenever you are using any creating custom hook, always start with use keyword, just like use state, use effect, use custom hook. So if you are not aware of custom hook, you can check out the linked video where you will learn how to create custom hook from scratch and how to use it. So here to use this, we can export. So we'll just create first use theme. So, and here we can use that particular context, use context, Here we need to use theme context, and from this we'll just take out whatever value we are passing, and we'll pass context. Now I will export default this. What we are doing, if you check the use context wherever we are using, we are destructuring selected theme and then toggle theme. So all of this we can convert into just context, store that, and then we can destructure this. So that's what I am doing inside this use theme. I'm just returning this. So advantage is that we can add one extra condition here. So let's first use this. So wherever we are using use context for theme, we can use this use theme hook. Now I don't need to use this. So whatever I am returning, I can directly use it here. Const equal to, and I can remove this first line. So you can see now this import we don't need, and this use context import is also not needed. We can just copy paste this at only for theme context, and we can remove this theme context wherever we are using. So we don't need this theme context, and here again we can use theme. We need to import this, and here we can take out the same things here. Now we don't need this theme context. This also. By just using use theme, we are able to directly use the context. So inside use theme, we are using this context. So the advantage of creating this hook is that you can add a conditional check here. So if of type of context is equal to undefined, then throw new error, use theme inside the theme context only inside. So let me remove this and you will see what happens. So let's say this use theme I am using in every component. So we have wrapped everything inside this. So let's create one component, test.jsx. And this test component I am using not inside this theme provider. I will use this fragment syntax, and here I will use test component. Now inside this test component, I will use that use theme hook. For selected theme, destructure this. Now you can see we are getting error. Cannot destructure property selected theme of this. So this error you will get, and when you have large application, you will not be able to understand what's the error, what the what it causing, why the error is coming. So you will not able to understand why the error is coming. So for developer experience, what you can do is we have added this condition. So whenever you use this type of condition, you will get this error whatever we are throwing. So you can see use theme only inside the theme context. So this use theme hook uses theme context, and this theme context we are using outside the provider. So theme provider is here, and we are trying to use that context inside this test component. So when you have lot of components, by mistake you might be using that particular provider context in any other component and you will get this error. So to avoid that error and to allow only the particular component to use the particular theme context, you can you can use this particular condition. So this helps to identify where is the actual error. So when you type correct error message, so this is use theme, I am using inside theme context, but this particular test component is not inside theme context. Theme provider context is in here and I am using that outside. So that's a good for developer experience, so you will be able to know that there is some error you are using outside a particular provider. We are using container theme and it is also light or dark, so theme dot dark, theme dot light. So whenever these classes are there, you will see that. So if you see here, we have theme light. So when I click on this, you can see it changes to theme dark. So whenever there is a change in the prop, you can see all the components, for all the components it's changed. Previously that whenever the provider or context changes, all the components, so app component and all the child components in which are rendered will be automatically re-rendered. So every component in between the context provider will be re-rendered. So that is not 100% true, that is only half true. So for to be demonstrate that, I have created three components. So here is theme one. So I have the same code from theme context. So this is a state and then the toggle function. So in theme one, I have the same state and toggle function. I'm displaying the current selected theme and added a button to update that particular theme. And I'm using again theme context dot provider. Note that I'm not using theme provider directly. I'm using theme context dot provider and passing the value and selected theme. And I have defined two more components. First component just displays logs to the console and displays the name of the component. Similarly, second component which just logs and displays second component. So let's render the theme one component. So instead of rendering this, I will render theme one. Now if you check, you can see I'm displaying current theme, change theme button, and this is the first component, this is second component. Now let me open the console. Let me zoom in this so you will see it better. So initially you can see both the first and second component are re-rendered. And when I click on change theme, you can see theme is changed and both the components are re-rendered again. So again when I click on change theme, again theme is changed and both the components are re-rendered. So if you see here, we are using theme one. So this state, this theme one component contains a state, and whenever we change any state, the entire component hierarchy re-render. So all the component, this theme one component and all the child components will also re-render. So that is the default behavior of state update. So there is no relation with the context here. So whenever the theme is changed, automatically all the components will re-render. Now we have second component, theme 2 component. So if you see theme 2 component, so let's render that. Now this is the theme 2 component, it just displays from first component and from second component. So to add those buttons, let's do one thing. I will copy this and I will directly add it in the theme context. Div, and I will also import this button from React Bootstrap. Now if you check, you will see we have this theme, change theme, first component, second. So what I have done, this is the theme 2 component we are using. So I have wrapped all the components in the theme provider, and inside the theme provider I am displaying current theme and change. So these functions we are already having here. So whenever that you can see when the first time the component is mounted, the theme 2 component is mounted, both the first and second components are rendered. But when I click on change theme, you can see theme is changed. You can see, but none of the first and second components are not. What's the reason for that? So if you see theme 2, I am using theme provider, and in between I have defined those components. So whatever you define in between any of the component, that will go as a children. So theme provider component, it accepts a children. So whenever you render children in any of the component, children props will not re-render. So that is a very important thing React provides. So children is a special prop. So whatever you pass as a children will not be re-rendered. So no matter how many components you are passing as a children, those components will not be re-rendered. So that's the advantage of having separate theme provider component and you are using children prop. So let's say this theme 2 component I'm using first component. So if I move this inside theme context, so let's say I am using this here in first component from theme. Let's add it here. So this is the theme 2 component we are loading. You can see first component from theme is displayed. Then the first component is displayed. Why that is displayed? Because we are using in theme 2. So let me remove this. So now in theme provider we have only second component. So when I refresh this, you can see only first component from theme. So when I initially both the components are rendered, when I click on this, now you can see only first component from theme. So why that is re-rendered? So inside this context, I am using first component. But whenever, as I said, whenever the state in any of the component changes, all our child components will re-render. But children to component 2 I am passing as a children. So this theme provider, so if you see theme 2 component, it has a theme provider, and second component I am passing as a children prop. So second component is not re-rendered because I am passing as a children prop. So even if this theme provider component is re-rendered because I am changing theme here. You can see I have changed theme button. So when I click on this entire theme provider component is re-rendered. Still, only the first component is re-rendered, not the second component which is coming as a children prop. So this is same as writing it second component. So but when I write it like this component will re-render. But when I pass that as a children, that component will not re-render. This is known as composition pattern in React. So children is a very special prop. So whatever you pass as a children will not be re-rendered even if the parent component re-renders. So that's very important. So even if the context provider is changed, selected theme, everything is changed, I am passing any component as a children. So children component will not re-render. That's very important thing. So now I will remove this first component from here. That was just for demo, and I will bring it back here. Now we have theme 3 component. So here you can see I'm using the same theme provider, first component and second component. So let's render theme 3. So if you see theme 3 is exactly same. So where is theme 3? So here is theme 3. The only difference is that, so if you see theme 2, it's exactly same as theme 3. Only difference is I am using context. So I have wrapped both of these components in a theme provider. So in any of these components, or their child components, I can use context hook to access that particular theme context. So whatever I am passing here, this theme context passes two things: selected theme, and it also has toggle theme. So this is part of this particular theme context. So if you open this theme context, you can see I am passing selected theme and toggle theme. So this is theme provider. So inside this, I am using theme provider. So all of these I can destructure. So even though I'm not destructuring, I have just used theme use context here, and I am rendering now this theme 3 component. So what will happen now? So if I refresh, you can see both the first and second components are rendered first time. And now when I click on change theme, you can see theme is changed, but only the first component is re-rendered. Again changing, only the first is re-rendered. Why the first component is re-rendering? Because I am using context here. So whenever you are using use context hook or you are using custom hook, whenever particular value changes, that particular component where you are using that, it will re-render. So if in the second component I am not using any context, that's why second component is not re-rendering, only the first component is re-rendering. So when I click on this, only the first component is re-rendering. But if I use this context again in second component, you will see second components also re-rendered. So initially, let me refresh. So initially both the components will be rendered, but when I click on change theme, now you can see both the components are re-rendered. So when you are not using any context or you don't have any state, that component will not be re-rendered even though it is part of theme context provider. So this is because I am using the children prop. So whatever you go add it here will go as a children, and children is a special prop in React. So even though the parent component, as I said, even though this theme provider component changes, if you are setting this theme, children prop will not re-render. So whatever you pass will not be re-rendered again. That's very important thing to understand. So if you don't pass anything as a children, you directly use any component, that will be re-rendered when the parent component re-render. But with children prop, you get a composition pattern where anything you pass as a children will not be re-rendered. So that's how you can use the React context API, and you should remember that always use this pattern of using theme provider and wrap your context theme context dot provider. So if you see in the app.jsx, we have used this pattern also. So with this pattern, whenever this dispatch, so right now we only have dispatch, so whenever the dispatch prop is coming from use reducer, so this will never change. So dispatch has a fixed identity, it will never change. But if I am passing this as a contact, if context changes by some mean, then this component will re-render. Because I am not using children prop here, I am directly using contact context dot provider. But in this case, in theme 2, you can see I am using theme provider. So I am using children prop. So whatever you are passing as a children will not be re-rendered. So that's you need to remember. So whenever you are directly using theme context dot provider, if you have some components in between, those components will be re-rendered whenever any of the value changes. So you should, to avoid that re-render of components, what you can do is you wrap this theme context dot provider in a component, just like we have done in this theme context. So we have created a separate component which wraps that, and we are using directly children. So this is a common pattern you will see in industrial company projects, where instead of directly using this theme context dot provider passing value, you create a provider component and you wrap this in this, you use this children prop. So this way whatever you pass in between will not be re-rendered. So as we have seen here, as a part of this I am passing these as children. So whenever theme provider component changes, any value from this component changes, so even if selected theme is changed, that we are passing as a value prop, but still those two components will not re-render unless you are using any of the particular theme. So unless you are using any of the context, so in theme 2 I am not using any context, so these components will not re-render. In theme 3 I am using context, so only the first component will re-render. Even though you have used children, as you are using context, so it has to re-render because you are getting a new value. So if you are using selected theme here, so you will be using that theme and you need to use that particular theme to do something. So how it will automatically re-render that component. So that's why whenever you are using use context in any of the component, even though you have used children prop, that component will re-render. But if you are not using anything, if you are not using use context to, this component will not re-render. So that's it about this video. If you found it useful, do like it and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.